So one of the definitions of love is decentering the self. Decentering the self. That's why love is so powerful. Because when you really love someone, it's truly altruistic. You love them, you want good for them, not for anything that you can receive from them. Right? So it's like a woman came with her new husband, and she said, and they came like almost like marital counseling, and she was really upset. She said, my husband, he said he loves me fi sabilillah. What's wrong with that? She said, he loves me for the sake of God, right? So what's wrong with that? She said, he just loves me out of some religious obligation, like because God commanded me. He doesn't just love me for me. No, fi sabilillah does not like that. Fi sabilillah means I love you altruistically. I love you not for anything I can get. I love you not as a means to something, but as an ends in yourself. False love substitute is when I love you for something you can give me. This is like this cage of reputation. This is false love. This is like I love you for what I can get from you. This is not real love. True love is I love you and I want good for you, even if I have nothing to do with it. Even if I never benefit from it, even if it has nothing to do with me. This is fi sabilillah, just for the sake of Allah. This is true love. This is true love. And the opposite of fi sabilillah is self-interested. Right? I love you, I'll become your friend, right? Because I want something from you. May Allah make us true lovers and give us true love and make us sincere. And may Allah give us the ability to decenter ourselves. Again, when you truly love someone, it's not about what you love. You think about your beloved, oh, this is what they would love. And this is also the Sunnah. People talk about the Sunnah, sometimes they're like mad. Sunnah, 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 my beard is my pant length. They haven't understood the first thing of the Sunnah. The Sunnah is love. Sayyidina Anas, who was a boy, his mother was poor, and she said, I wish I could give the Prophet something, sallallahu alaihi, but I don't have anything to give him, so I'll give him my son to live with him and serve him. Her beloved son. So he grew up in the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi. The Prophet loved him. And this is a miracle. If no other miracle proof of prophecy, Anas said later, he said, my whole life, and he said, he was a boy. He said, never once. The Prophet raised him. He was like a stepfather to him. He said, never once did I do something, and the Prophet said, why did you do that? Or not do something, and he said, why didn't you do that? Never once. Anyone who's tried to raise a child knows this is enough of a miracle. This is impossible for us, This is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He never expressed this. He said never even did he say, oof, like not even the slightest displeasure. This is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi. But once Anas said he was with the Prophet and they were invited to someone's house and there was served a dish. And this dish included like pumpkin, little pieces of pumpkin in it. And he noticed that the Prophet ﷺ was eating the pumpkin, like reaching for it, that he liked this. And so he started to take the pumpkin from his side of the plate. Of course, they ate from shared platters and put it towards the Prophet. And then he said something. And again, he's narrating this much later, after the Prophet ﷺ has passed away. He said, from that day forward, pumpkin has become the most beloved food for me. He didn't just say, and from that day forward, I follow the Sunnah and I eat pumpkin. No, he said love. He said actually changed the taste of pumpkin for me. The Sunnah is love. It's not I follow out of an obligation. It's actually love transforms your love. The Prophet ﷺ said, none of you truly believe until he loves for his brother or sister what he loves for himself. Right? And this is in humanity. You don't believe until you love for everyone what you love for yourself. But he also said, sallallahu alaihi, none of you truly believe until his desires accord with what I have brought. Right? This is actually this alignment Because we have some desires that are good and some desires that are not. But when we surrender, we think not only what do I want, but what would the Prophet love? What would the Prophet do? Right? When we forego what we might like, oh, but the Prophet would love this instead, and we do that, this is alignment. And it's hard to do that except by love. When you love, it's easy. When you love someone, it's easy. You want to imitate them. I remember this just thinking back. So I had in my neighborhood, there was a older kid. You know, when I was maybe 10, he was like a teenager. He was named Isaac, and he was a very good athlete. And I thought he was the coolest person in the world when I was 10. You know, you look up to these older kids, and he was like a great football player and all these things. And he would play with me, like he was like nice to me and things. So I loved him. And I went over to his house once. This is a true story, and it's hilarious to think back on this. For some reason, he used to love to eat pickles and V8 juice. So I would go to his house and he was eating pickles and V8 juice. And as a 10-year-old, I hated pickles and V8 juice. But after going to his house, I went to my mom. I said, Mom, buy V8 juice and pickles. And I would drink it when I was at home because I loved him. I looked up to him. And I actually started to like pickles and V8 juice. What 10-year-old does this? But this is the reality of love. And we all model ourselves on people. We all emulate. And so this is the purpose of these prophets and guides and messengers. We look at them, we want to model ourselves on them. We want to emulate them in the smallest way. And we find that nothing they did was small. And this is why, Habib Ali, the same one I mentioned, he got this opening. His sheikh was Habib Abdul Qadir al-Saggaf, who was one of the greatest awliya of the previous generation. And he lived with him and studied with him. And then he read the Shama'il, which some of you have read. It's a description of how the Prophet was. It's a collection of hadith about how he was, how he lived, how he dressed. Beautiful collection to study. And he said when he studied it, he said, I already knew this book by heart because everything in that book I had seen in my teacher. Down to how he washed his hands. Down to how he greeted people. So he said, I've already seen this, but I didn't know that it was from the Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi. So these living examples give us this. Just to tell a story of Abdul Qadir al-Saggaf, because when the great ones are mentioned, the hearts are opened. And this is a true story that Habib Ali told, that he witnessed. That they were in a gathering, and then they were leaving. And they got in their car, and Habib Abdul Qadir was in the passenger seat, and there was a driver, and there was a man who came out who really loved him. Right? This was like my sheikh, and he loved him. And so the sheikh got in the car, and the man shut the door, and they were speaking through the window, and he was greeting him, and he was telling him, I love you, and they were just speaking for like 5 minutes. And then eventually they depart and they go. And as they get to the street and turn, he says to Habib Ali, he says, stop the car and come over to my door and open it because my hand is shut in the door. And he like, why didn't you say something? Like the door shut 5 minutes ago. And he like rushed. And he said, why didn't you say something? He said, it would have broken his hand. It would have broken his heart to know that he shut my hand in the door. These are these people. This is the level of care and concern they have for people. And another one of the stories of Abdul Qadir al-Saggaf is that, he lived in Jeddah. His ancestral homeland was Yemen, but he was in Jeddah in Arabia. And one of these very wealthy oil people from Saudi Arabia came and loved him and gave him this bag full of money, like millions of riyal. And the driver, he came to his driver and he said, let's go around. And he drove to all these places where he knew families that were poor or families that were in difficulty, and he distributed. And the driver said it took hours because it was so much money, like all day. Until late at night we were going around. And he said at the end he took the bag and he shook it to make sure there was not a single bill in it. And then he turned and he said, oh Allah, bear witness that I have discharged the trust. You know, this is their state. They see everything as like, okay, whatever Allah gives me, it's only His test. How will I use it? So may we be like this, inshallah. Now.